Hello, Dad. Today we're sitting in our, hallway. Yeah, hallway.
Lovely.
And I wanted to show you some of our, I call it artwork, if you will, or it's a bit a pass down memory lane. And these tiles, the story behind them is that we were in Berlin and we had an apartment. They had a kind of like these photo tiles, and so I liked the idea, but I didn't like the motifs. So I took some of our own pictures and then made our own, and so the middle row was born. On top of that, we have London, which was created later when it was one of Vivien's London visits, and at the bottom row we have Vancouver. And I wanted to maybe talk about some of the motifs. Let's talk about the middle row. The first picture is a picture that we took in the Museum of Natural Sciences in Berlin. It is a dinosaur, obviously.
But it's not Tristan.
But it's not Tristan, it's not the T-Rex.
It's not the T-Rex. The T-Rex is usually shown on pictures and is commonly known far and wide. But we didn't have Tristan. If we wanted to have Tristan, we should have asked Iris.
Yes. The second one is a picture taken slightly from the distance, which takes a photo of the museums in the museum island. And this museum is...
That's the Nouveau Gallery. It's called the New Museum or the Nouveau Galerie, and it's a sort of addition to the Pergamon Museum. They have mostly Egyptian and Roman arts that is gathered in there, and by now it should be connected to the Pergamon Museum. So you can do Pergamon Museum and the New Museum, as it's usually called in Berlin, together, and without having to change museums. They build a tunnel under the museums to connect them.
Mm-hmm. The next one is, interestingly, basically just the courtyard of exactly that apartment we stayed in with Inst.
Yes, and I took a photo of it because it's pretty common for Prenzlauer Berg.
Yes, which is interesting because there are these, you could call them apartment blocks from the
19th century.
Early 19th century, and they have multiple courtyards going back. And so it's not just one complex, it's multiple complexes back, so multiple layers of buildings behind each other.
And depending on what courtyard you lived in, the rent was cheaper. If you lived in the third courtyard, it was the cheapest apartment you could get while living like in the front row building or living in the first courtyard. You had to have some money.
The next one is, if you're from Berlin or know Berlin, this is like the thing everybody takes a picture of or is very known for. It is the Berlin
TV Tower, East Berlin TV Tower.
East Berlin TV Tower, or
there are actually two of them. And that's the one from East Berlin.
Yeah, but the West Berlin Tower, nobody knows how it looks like.
I don't know. I think many of West Germans know the West German TV Tower. The West German TV Tower is known because it's integrated in the Berlin Messe. And that's why usually people come to when there is a gathering or something like that.
Yeah, it's exactly it. The next one is again a picture of the museum island. This time it's the Bode Museum.
Yes, known for art and sculpture.
Exactly, it's the
church art mostly.
Yes,
like old church statues, like Maria, Jesus, things like that.
Yeah. The next one is an interesting picture. It's from the Ampelmännchen, which is the East German traffic sign, so the walk sign. There is actually a do not walk sign, which is a red
Ampelmann
holding out,
stretching out his arms if you want to.
And the interesting thing about this one is, at that time, because the East German signage was not conforming to West German standards, they were slowly replacing them until...
No, they were planning to replace
Well, they were
them.
planning to replace them, and some places they also did. And this was interesting. At that time, you could actually know if you were in East Berlin or West Berlin, depending simply by looking at the signage of the walk signs. And then there was a minor revolt amongst
The people,
the
tourists,
people.
especially tourists.
That said, we actually really like that sign, and
They should keep it.
so now they're keeping it, and this is actually, yeah. But at that time, we weren't entirely sure if it was going to stay. Luckily, they decided to keep that signage, and a lot of East German states have that signage now as their default signage.
Yeah.
The next one is the Quadriga, which is on top of the Brandenburg Gate.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was taken by Napoleon and then taken back. So it's the first photo picture.
And the last one was in very East Berlin fashion, one of those really weird shops. It was a shoe store that sold used shoes.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the way Jose stored their shoes. And this is the end. So
it's just one of, well, it's an old store. It has been there all along, and it's not one of these gentrified, new shiny new stores. So it's a real one. It's what it looked like beforehand. That's why I took the photo, because I wanted to have a reminder about how it looked before gentrification took place. Because nowadays, you still have cool shops, but they kind of all look the same because they're gentrified.
Well, because they're modern and hip and cool and...
They sometimes they look a bit shabby, but actually it's that shabby chic. So you can see it's not shabby because it's worn down, but because it was made to look like it, and it's not the real one. So you can, there's a difference, and this one is the real one. It's shabby because it's a worn down place.
The top row is London, which is... and the very first one is a very common sight, tourist picture. It's the...
Tower Bridge.
Tower Bridge, exactly. Yeah.
Just different angle, not the usual one.
Well, it would be boring. The next one is... That's a picture that is from a, what do you call it, a sculpture, if you will, in front of the Naval
There's a ship
Museum.
in a bottle.
Ship in a bottle, yeah.
It's in front of the Maritime Museum,
Maritime
which
Museum,
is situated in Greenwich Park near Queen's House.
Exactly.
And it's standing at the gate when you walk into the park.
And it's actually really
Standing
large,
there.
right?
Yeah, it's an armful, at least a meter, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
And Greenwich Park was just around the corner from us, and the observatory too and stuff like that, and I took it on one of the morning walks.
Yeah.
The third one is actually a Chinese restaurant. And I found that so funny because it's a boat.
Yeah.
It's on, Regent's Canal, I think. I'm not quite sure. We took a walk around London that day, and we've been to Regent's Park, and then we walked around all the corners and in the neighborhood, and came down to the canals. There are pretty much canals going on that are there, and I saw that ship, and it was actually closed that day, or else we would have had our lunch in there. And I found it pretty funny that it's a...
It looks very cliche.
Yeah, on one hand it looks very cliche, and on the other hand I found it so funny because it has those little balconies and stuff like that. That's why I took the picture.
Next one, Naval College? Naval Academy.
No, actually that's Queen's House, and the Naval College is the thing right behind.
Oh.
Between the Queen's House and the skyscrapers on the other side of the Thames.
Okay.
So that one's actually Queen's College, and it's the view that you have if you're up the hill, near the observatory in front of a wolf statue.
Ah, okay, so it's close to the
It's
Greenwich Observatory.
Thomas Wolfe, James Wolfe, I don't know, but Wolfe.
Yeah.
And when you look down, you see the Queen's house, and then behind there's the Naval College, then there's the Thames River, and then the skyscrapers belong
It's
to
Canary Wharf.
Wharf, yeah, which is quite funny because, well, Queen's House and the college, they are built in the 19th century, and Canary Wharf just looks out of a sci-fi movie. Especially when you take the London subway, it drives right through it and looks absolutely space.
Yeah, it's very neat.
The next picture is Naval College.
That's
and
actually
then
the Naval
Queen's
College.
House in the back. So you see the other side of
So it's
Queen's
actually the exact opposite to Unifio.
Yeah, exactly. And that one's not my picture. That's actually Iris' picture because Iris took it.
Okay, that's kind of cool. The next one was
That's also Regent's Canal, and I took it because of the cow. Because I have a cow. It's not a real cow; it's a fake cow, but still. Lovely houses, and yes, they have a cow, and they also have small boats. They have tied to their fences so they can just walk down and take the rowing boat to go down the canal. And I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah, the next one is the British Museum. It's, I don't know if they call that the main hall, but it's actually, I think it used to be a courtyard before they put the glass roof on it. Now, like I said, it has a glass roof, so it makes a pretty huge hall. I actually tried to get a better picture of it, to have like the old walls out of the 19th century and then the new walls and the staircase clearly built in the 20th century. But actually that day, the whole museum was so crowded. I mean, we were in a flock of Japanese tourists, and we're just, swept through the museum. It was like living in a fish swarm. And so I took that picture. Actually, I took a couple of pictures, and that one proved to be the best one. It's actually a pretty well-known picture. I think everyone is taking that, because I don't know if you can see it on the picture, but I think there are a lot of tourists.
I've seen a very similar
it's
angle
pretty
of
well
that
known.
already.
The British Museum in itself, it's a real treat. They have like all kinds of arts. When you enter the museum, you have Egyptian statues like Ramses II. You have a huge statue. If you walk through the museum, they have some sort of Babylonian arts. They even have small tiles from the road of, it's not Pergamon, it's the one they have in Berlin. They have the whole street, the blue and yellow tiles.
Oh, it's the Babylon.
Yeah, it's Babylon, but it's got a name.
It's okay.
Yeah, they have some tiles there of that street, but only some tiles. So that one made us smirk because we know where to find the whole street. And the Japanese tourists were all fascinated because the colors of the tiles are really, really beautiful. And of course, they had to take a lot of photographs. So you had the flashlights, and we were like, yeah, right, we know where to find the whole street. And then they have in the upper levels of the museum, they actually have like jewelry collection, all sorts of shit, like all sorts of gemstones. It's a rainbow of colors, and then all kinds of jewelry fashion. I think that one was too where they have a fashion collection, where they just collected like old gowns and stuff and put them on display so you can see the changes in fashion, like from like Baroque times, I think, like with those huge bulky suits and stuff like that. And then it's fascinating.
Yeah, and the last one.
And it's for free. That's the best. All national museums in London are for free. Like the Natural Science Museum is for free. The Art Gallery, I think, is for free. Then the National Art Gallery is for free. And actually, this one is for free too. Which might explain why there are such a
Well,
huge crowds of
yeah.
people.
And the last one?
Was taken on the Thames. That's actually a subway station. It's Cutty Sark. If you would be there in the back, you would see actually Cutty Sark, because Cutty Sark is a ship.
I think I saw this in a YouTube video from CCP Grey. That's actually a tower.
Yes,
for
and
a
that's
underpass.
yeah,
under the
exactly.
Thames.
That's sort of the entry to the to the subway station.
I think that's an entry to the underpass.
Yeah,
I'll
or
show
to
you
the
I'll show you
underpass.
the video.
Yeah, or might be to the
might link the
underpass.
video
Yeah,
here.
for me it's kind of even
Yeah.
the underpass is entry to the subway station to the tube. But actually that's the entry, and then behind you, well, in front of you, really in front of you will be the Thames River.
Mm-hmm.
And behind you will be Cutty Sark. Cutty Sark actually is a ship
Mm-hmm.
out of the 19th century, pirate ship I think it was, and they restored it because it wasn't really, they had it like that, and it's a wooden ship, so of course with London rain and traffic and stuff like that, of course it was completely rotten, so they restored it and now built a glass wall around it. So if you come onto the place, it looks like the ship, because it's standing a bit, it's not completely enclosed by the glass roof, but it's open, so you can actually go onto the ship too.
So the glass roof would be at water level, right?
Yeah, so if you come onto the place, it just looks like the ship is actually
Sailing on a glass roof.
yes, sailing on a glass wave, if you want to put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty cool because if you go close, you can look down into the museum. You can see people walking on there, climbing onto the ship, because you go into the museum, they climb onto the ship, and then they come up, and suddenly you get them over your head because they're on the upper decks of the ship and can look down on you, so it's pretty awesome. But this one is actually, like I said, the metro station.
Mm-hmm.
We just took that photo, Iris and me, because we were regularly there. We took our breakfast there. We didn't went to a restaurant. We just there's a Starbucks near to it, and how's that other one? Coffee Fellows, I think the other chain is called, where Iris used to go. And we took a sandwich. We grabbed a sandwich to go, or cookie or something like that, and then because we have beautiful weather, we sat down near the Thames to have breakfast.
Yeah, and the lower row, that's pictures from Vancouver. The first picture is basically the view from our second apartment, and you see in front the park that was there. Behind that is the sea bus, which is the ferry that crosses the Vancouver harbor. And behind that is some sort of freight cargo ship. That was one of the parking spots that they had. Sometimes there were some ships, sometimes there weren't, but they were parked there. The next picture, that is a First Nation sculpture that is in front of the Vancouver aquarium. And it depicts orca, the killer whale, and yeah, I kind of like that art style. The next one is actually again the same view as the first picture, but at nighttime. It's actually interestingly that you see in the middle of these like shells. That's the
That's Canada Place.
That's Canada Place, exactly.
It should be looking like a ship with full sails.
Yeah, and it's actually
it's a hint that Canada is a nation of immigrants.
Yeah, but
they will come by ship.
But that's actually also the shipping terminal for the cruise lines.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And so that's actually so the sails actually have different colors, different color patterns. And on the top left, slightly you still see, which is we call it the UFO, which is the
alien spaceship.
Yeah, which is it has a name. I forgot the name, but
it's Vancouver Tower, I think.
Yeah, and it's exactly, and so they always altered the light patterns.
Yeah, they
and
always had a different color.
Yeah, some mint. The next one is actually a view from our first apartment, which is has again the aquabus this time, which is a small ferry that crosses
The sound.
That
Yeah, it's a ferry that's just driving around the sound.
yeah that crosses the Fels Creek.
Yeah.
So which is and we were right above the
Hornby Deck, it's called.
yeah
Hornby Deck.
the next one is an interesting one because it looks inconspicuous, but it's kind of weird because it's this is a New York yellow taxi, but it's a BMW, which kind of makes no sense at all until you realize that this is actually a picture from a set that was used for Man in the High Castle.
Yeah.
And this is one of the oddities about Vancouver is that you kind of constantly
stumble over
trip over movie sets, and this was actually behind one of our the first office I worked in, and this street is used basically everywhere. You see the street is used in Deadpool, the street was used in Man in the High Castle, the street was used in a bunch of commercials. It's if you need a street that looks New Yorkish,
you take that one.
You take that street, exactly. Actually, our first apartment is in the movie Deadpool 2.
And the first and the second one.
No.
In both. I checked it.
Okay.
If you know where to look and if you know where it was, it's in both.
Okay, if you say so. I don't know where in the first one, but I'll admit. The next one is the contribution to culinary culture from Canada. They also contribute.
Except the syrup.
Yeah, it's poutine or poutine, however you want to pronounce it, and it's basically just fries with cheese curds and gravy.
And the gravy has to be hot enough to melt the cheese curds.
Yes, that's very important. And this one is with bacon, so it's not yeah. And this is one of the interesting things about Vancouver is that there's a lot of good food in Vancouver, but most of it is actually brought by the immigrants, which makes it interesting, and craft beer. So that was. The next one is the Sun Yat-sen Garden. Actually, this is the park, the view from the park onto the garden complex. And this picture is interesting because it shows the replica Ming Dynasty garden, which is a very accurate replica, and it depicts a garden from a scholar's house.
Mm-hmm.
So the actual house bit is missing, mostly.
Well, they have some rooms.
Yeah, but
they had the study room, then they had the small theater room where they explained that if they would recite poems or have a play in the family or for some appreciated guests, then they had this room too. Then they had the entrance hall, mm-hmm. where if you would have come to visit that house or that scholar during mm-hmm. that time, you would have been led to the entrance hall and you would have had to wait there, and every transaction, every discussion that you would have had with the scholar would have taken place there. So they have like 3 or 4 rooms that have an explicit use to them, like the study room you use for the study, that's where the scholar used to study and work. The theater room was there to recite poems or to create poems or to have like small theater plays. And the entrance hall, of course, is the only room that comes into contact with the outer world meaning the world outside the house. So as a guest or someone visiting there, you would have seen nothing else but this entrance hall room, mm-hmm. actually.
Yeah. And exactly. And what I like, the reason why I took this picture, we have better pictures of the actual garden, is because it kind of shows the contrast between the totally realistic looking replica of a Chinese garden, and then right behind it the high rises of Vancouver. And the final picture, that is from the Gordon's brother shop. And it's one of the interesting things about it's a historically accurate store that looks like it's from a Western, basically.